Hello, everyone. Welcome to This Week in Economics with Robert Wenzel. I'm Robert Wenzel. This week's topic is how Joe Biden's $1.9 trillion stimulus package could wreck the economy. And boy, do I think it could wreck the economy, especially from an inflation perspective. Let me set the scene here. The United States government is spending money, 1.9 trillion based on this package that they don't have. That's going to increase the money supply by a tremendous amount. Last year, under the Trump administration, the money supply increased by approximately $4 trillion. That's an increase in the money supply of just over 25%. That is a huge amount of money that went into the system. We don't know exactly how much money is going to come into the system because of this new spending, but it could be spectacular. And we've got a inflation threat developing now at the consumer level because of last year's spending, never mind this year's spending. Now, the 1.9 trillion this year, the Biden administration spending, 1,400 is going to go to individuals. There's a cap, so people who are high earners won't be getting the check, and very young people, grammar school infants won't be getting checks. But the large majority of Americans, 250 million, 280 million, are going to be getting checks. That will mean more than $350 billion spent that way. There's going to be money going to venture capitalists, to entrepreneurs, to state and local governments, basically because of the irresponsible spending they've had. This is going to be an excuse to bail them out, in addition to the lockdowns where they weren't getting the regular revenues coming in. There's going to be money going through to K through 12, to colleges, to universities. There's a lot of money going in a lot of different ways. In addition, people who are unemployment are going to be getting an additional $400 a week from the federal government. So all that does is create incentive for people to stay home, because many of them will not be able to find jobs that are paying them as much as the unemployment. So if you get a combination of state unemployment and the federal government is giving you $400 additional every week, you don't really have an awful lot of incentive to look for a job. So it's going to create a situation where unemployment is going to be a lot higher than it necessarily needs to be, which actually increases the price inflation pressure, because those people that are unemployed are not producing products and services and whatnot. So there's less product and less service in the economy. But here's the key. Again, during the Trump administration last year in 2020, the money supply increased by $4 trillion. That's starting to percolate through the economy now. Now, the first place it usually goes is to the asset classes, because of the way the structure of the Federal Reserve System is in the fractional reserve banking. A lot of the money gets into the system through commercial bank loans. So you see assets go up. And we're seeing that now. We're seeing the stock market go up. We're seeing housing prices go up. We're seeing even baseball cards go up. Bitcoin is going up. Eventually, that works its way down through the economy. But that's the first place. But that's the signal. That's the signal that there may be danger ahead. And we're starting to see more signs of this. The producer price index was just released by the Bureau of Labor Statistics last week. And prices increased between December to end January by 1.3%. Now, it's dangerous and doesn't make sense to project that out, that's going to be the rate it will always be over the next 12 months. But to give you a sense of how large a 1.3% increase is for 1 month, if you annualize that, that's a rate of 15.6%. Let me repeat. The inflation rate in January, if it was to continue, is an inflation rate of 15.6% on an annualized basis. Now, I'm not forecasting that price inflation is going to continue at a 15.6% rate. But what I'm saying is we're getting a huge belt of inflation that's already percolating underneath. It has not hit the consumer sector yet. That tends to be the last place, but I expect it will in a very short period. Now, I think the first rate level will hit is 3%. Now, the Federal Reserve, I think, was acting irresponsibly last year when they pumped $4 trillion into the economy. I think they're acting irresponsibly right now. Uh, Federal Reserve Chairman Jay Powell actually went on Capitol Hill begging for more spending. Usually you have Federal Reserve Chairman go to the Hill and uh, demand that spending be lowered, that it's irresponsible spending. Jay Powell is doing the exact opposite. It's absolutely remarkable. It's absolutely stunning. Now, what the Federal Reserve will do is monetize most of this spending. The government does not have the $1.9 trillion. Through complex methods, they use what are known as primary dealers, which are your usual cronies, Goldman Sachs, Morgan Stanley, people like that, who buy the securities from the Treasury, and then the Federal Reserve, after the Goldman Sachs takes out their commission, uh, the Treasury will then buy the security from Goldman Sachs. And when the Federal Reserve does that, what it will do is issue a check, and that's the money that's created out of thin air. So most of the 1.9 trillion will be money created out of thin air. Most of it by Treasury securities being issued. However, Janet Yellen at the Treasury Department has a bank account with the Federal Reserve where there's $1.1 trillion sitting there. It's kind of like, think of it as a casino chip, and she can just walk to the cage anytime and cash it in. She will probably do that. And so the Federal Reserve will give her a check that way. And that's just another way of creating money. So I expect that most of the spending in this package, the 1.9 trillion, will be monetized by the Federal Reserve. Now, because of the fractional reserve banking system we have, banks, commercial banks, loan money on top of the money that's given to them by the Federal Reserve. So I expect the money supply to increase by an amount that's greater than the $1.9 trillion. So there's a lot of irresponsible spending at the government level. No warnings from Federal Reserve Chairman Jay Powell. Janet Yellen is in on the money print. She says it's fine. She doesn't expect any serious inflation. But again, we're starting to see the inflation already. And we're starting to see astute money managers and hedge fund managers start to warn about it. Goldman Sachs is actually, analysts there starting to warn about it. Bank of America analysts are starting to warn about it. So people who are looking closely can see it developing, and it should hit the consumer level. Now, one other mistake the Federal Reserve is doing is they think the inflation will come in at a slow level, largely because it has over the last 10 years, and they don't expect a major spike. But a major spike could happen very quickly. They don't expect it, and that's going to be another problem for them, because I expect inflation hit 3% within a few months, and they may not even really get concerned until it gets over 3%. But at that point, they'd have to raise interest rates to about 5% to battle that inflation. And we really have a situation where you would have to raise short-term rates that the Fed controls to about 5% to fight the inflation when it's at the 3% level, to really stop it. And basically what you have now, the Federal Reserve, the rate they control is the Fed funds rate, and that's at 0 to 0.25%. That's the target range the Fed has set for it. So to go to 5% to completely battle the inflation, they'd have to increase rates by 4.75 over their current 0.25%. And they're not going to do that on a short-term basis. So you're going to get a tiger by the tail situation. They may raise the short-term rate to 2% over a period, 2.5%, maybe even 3%. But in order to kill the inflation, they would have to go to 5%. They're not going to do that. So the inflation is going to climb even higher. And then what's going to happen is you're going to see the Fed increase it maybe to 4%, maybe to 5% at that point. But at that point, they need to have to raise it to 7%. So it's always chasing behind. And who knows where this stops? You're going to need a Federal Reserve chairman like Paul Volcker to come in and to raise rates very, very high to stop all this. And what happens when those rates are increased that high is it kills the asset bubble that has been created. So you see the things that were increasing the stock market, housing prices, and so on start to collapse. So that's sort of built into the system. That will happen somewhere down the road. But the irresponsibility right now is the money printing that's going on and the inflation it's going to cause. I see, as I said, 3% inflation over few months period easily. By the end of the year, I think it could easily increase to 5%. And we could even hit down the road, 18 months or so, uh, double digit inflation of 10% or so. So there's a lot of inflation built into the system. It's going to hurt a lot of people. By the way, if you're in debt, it's going to probably help you because wages are going to go up. You won't be able to buy more because there's not more product around, but you'll get more an increase in wages that will just allow you to keep up with your standard of living, or probably not completely, but a bit. But you'll be able to pay off your debt in cheaper dollars. So I expect the inflation to develop. It's also going to be the result of the dollar collapsing on foreign exchange markets. We have a lot of problems developing in a number of different directions. And the problem started last year with during the Trump administration, where President Trump encouraged Jay Powell to keep interest rates low and to finance all the debt spending that he was doing last year, deficit spending. And now you're getting the same thing with Joe Biden. And he's got on top of it, Washington Post is reporting senior Democratic officials are proposing a $3 trillion job and infrastructure package on top of the $1.9 trillion stimulus package. Okay, so that's completely irresponsible. The money isn't there. It's not going to help anybody. What helps people is increases in productivity, increases in goods being supplied and services being supplied. So the more you ease the lockdowns, the more you're going to get a beneficial advance that way. But just spending money by creating it out of thin air just puts more money in the system for the same amount of goods. And you're going to get some people that are going to get a lot of the money sooner than most people. And those are the people that are going to have an advantage because they'll be able to buy up prices before they're bid up. And most people are going to be on the tail end where they're not going to get the money till lower down in the train. And what's going to happen is their standard of living is going to drop because the inflation is going to increase quicker than the money's coming to them. So that's typically what happens with inflation. It benefits a few people right at the top, those that are close to power, and then it really hurts the vast majority of people. Even though they're getting $1,400 checks, remember, there's entrepreneurs and venture capitalists that are getting much bigger checks, and they may not get it in the form of a check they can spend right away on their own consumer goods, but they're getting checks where they can buy equipment that can produce even more money for them over time. So they're always going to be ahead of the game, and that's just the way it works. When you got a printing press going, those people that are close to the printing presses get the money first, and it will benefit them because if they get it first, they'll get it before the prices go up from that last spurt of money, and then everybody else down the road gets lesser money, and so the standard of living drops. It's very, very vicious, very, very destructive to the economy, very, very destructive to the masses of people. Now, on top of this, what might happen is if inflation really heaps up, you could see the Biden administration imposing price controls. And price controls do nothing but cause shortages. The problem is not that prices are going out of control for no reason. The prices are going out of control for very, very good reasons. It's irresponsible U.S. government spending with money they don't have, and the Federal Reserve being extra irresponsible by financing the irresponsible spending through monetization, through printing money out of thin air. That's what's going on. That's what's developing here. It's getting very, very serious. I expect serious problems to be developing later this year, and be prepared. Gold and silver is a good place to be. Once people realize that inflation is going to be heating up, it's going to be serious, they will race to what they consider inflation hedges, such as gold and silver. So keep that in mind, and just remember, later in the year, they're going to blame all kinds of people for the inflation and what's going on. But it started here. It started with the spending. It started last year with the spending in 2020, but it's continuing now in 2021. And if the second package comes in of $3 trillion, that would just be stunning and really remarkable, and not good for the economy. And let's hope they don't put the price controls on top of it, because then we've got shortages to deal with on top of it. That's the situation. Um, be sure to join me next week, Sunday, when I'll have another episode up. It goes up at 11 a.m. Eastern Time, 8 a.m. Pacific Time. And be sure to subscribe, whatever podcast, if you're watching this on YouTube, wherever, subscribe, because I also put up during the week, this week in economics pop-up editions. And those are where I take 5 minutes or less to discuss something that is developing in the economy. So you don't want to miss those. My regular show, my feature show, is this show on Sundays, but I occasionally have pop-up editions, so you don't want to miss those. And if you subscribe, you'll get notified when those occur. Also, be sure to visit my normal website, which is economicpolicyjournal.com. And I write about the economy, I write about economic policy, I write about economic personalities Monday through Friday there, and then also on Saturday and Sunday. I don't stop. I'm putting up new material all the time. And if you need to know about what's going on in the economy, if you like to get a little bit of gossip of what's going on in the economics world and what's going on with personalities, that's the place to go. economicpolicyjournal.com. Thanks for visiting. Talk to you next week.